everybody. I think we've waited long enough for everyone. In essence of time, I think we should get started. So first, I'll introduce myself again. My name is Blake Podasic. I'm an implementation manager here at Labster. I work closely with institutions across the country to basically get their courses set up and running to make sure everything works effectively before getting started with usage with students. Tonight we have my colleague Chris Connor, who was one of our regional directors that helped broker this deal for the LA Unified School District. So I'd like to thank him for joining, as well as I believe we have Iham and Susan from LAUSD on the integration side as well. Just wanted to say thanks to both of them for all of their help to get this integration up and running and making sure that we have everything basically where it needs to be to get the most access for everybody here in the school district. So I just wanted to give a brief introduction of what we're going to look into tonight, and that would be basically making sure that all of you as instructors have the tools necessary to be successful with Labster for the upcoming school year. And that entails walking through our faculty resource page, which you can see shared here on my screen, and basically learning the ins and outs of this resource page to be able to select the simulations that you would like to use specifically for your class. So if there are any questions that you may come up with during the course of my presentation, please take note of those. Feel free to write them down or enter those into the questions portion of the webinar here. And near the end of the presentation, I will open up to a live question answer. If we're able to have people ask questions unmuted, we can certainly try to do that. But probably the preferable thing would be to go through the question chat just to make sure that we can answer any and all questions that come through. So without further ado, I'll jump right in and we'll get started. So as we can see here on my screen, we have the faculty resource page. And this is the page that I'm going to give access to all of you so that you're able to go through and look at simulations that you might have interest in for your class. And what I mean by that is when you can go into the faculty resource page and you check the simulations page, this will list all of our current live running simulations. So you have the option to go through and search through our entire course package, or you can go through in subjects that specifically interest you in your classes or just in your general interests. For instance, anything under General Chemistry 1 and 2 is a simulation based on topics within that subject area. There are also related simulations that carry some techniques and subtopics of something to do within the world of General Chemistry 1 and 2 as well. As you can see, you'll be able to select a simulation and it will give you some brief learning outcomes if you hover over the name. But if you click on the name, it will allow you to go in and check out the actual simulation that we have for acids and bases. And there's a number of things that you can do on this page. The first of which is you'll be able to use this video right here to be able to walk through the entire simulation just so you can see exactly what goes on within the simulation itself. The person that we have playing the simulation is one of our experts that helped build the simulation itself. So you'll be able to see exactly what needs to be done to complete the simulation. A lot of times this can be used for instructors trying to help students that get stuck in a simulation, or certainly just be used for review to see exactly what kind of simulations you want to use within your class. You also have the ability to download any of the quiz questions that we have in the simulation. These quiz questions will be downloaded in a PDF format, so you're welcome to use those as a pre or post lab exercise just to cement in the information that is held within each simulation, or you can use that as a quiz on your own as an extra grade that may be needed for something during the semester. You also have the option to play the simulation so you can see the ins and outs of how everything works within the digital lab here that we have. So going through the simulation basically just entails answering all the questions and going along with the storyline for that general simulation. And then by the end, you'll have your grade and you'll be able to see exactly what that simulation is like and if it will actually work for your class. On top of that, you have the ability to read through the learning theories that we used to come up with the information within the simulation itself. So by going into the theory section, you have the ability to walk through all of the same information that's housed within the lab pad for the student. And all of this information is meant to assist the student on their way through the simulation. So we include several different pages and links that contain drawings, that contain definitions, anything that's necessary to complete the simulation, they have access to, and you do too from this page as well. So going back to the actual simulation page, you can also scroll down and get a brief description of what's going to go on within the simulation itself. This will help you to get a good idea if you don't have the time to play through the simulation to see exactly if this is a fit for your class or not. We also label any sort of techniques that the students might work on, and then any of the learning objectives that we expect students to get from the simulations itself. So going back to the Labster faculty resource page, I just want to mention that this page is strictly for instructors. This is really meant for review only, just to see exactly what simulations fit your class, and basically making sure that the information that you're going to utilize for your class is correct for what is necessary for you to complete by the end of the semester. We don't have the ability to share these simulations with students, but then I will show you exactly how to get the simulations for student use directly from your LMS in Schoology. So from there, the last thing that's necessary for everybody here is to go through the teacher resources. This page just simply has a few different links to articles on our website that basically guide instructors through beginning days of use, just to get you up to speed and essentially to know what to look for within Labster. You also can look through different theories of teaching with Labster from other instructors that have used Labster in the past, and then any sort of case studies that we have put into our blogs as well from other institutions across the country, and in some cases in other countries as well. We do have a small section for student resources so that you can send this information out to students to make sure that they have the ability to get up and running at a decent speed as well. And any information that students do not get from this general area, they can refer directly to our support team, and all they have to do is go anywhere on our website or within Schoology. You have the ability to go through the simulation as well to reach this chat bot to reach out to our support team. And this can be a student's main lifeline if they are struggling with something in simulations, if they do have a technical issue. We do ask that all students reach out directly to our support team so that we can make sure to track and trace any issues to make sure that things are isolated, or to make sure that we can use that information to fix somebody else's issue down the road. For more information on the support team, I can always loop back to that at the end of the presentation as well. So I was actually gifted with a really nice presentation that somebody at the LA Unified School District put together for us. And it's basically just going to show the brief process that has been set up within Schoology to be able to enable instructors to come into a resource section to be able to take the simulations directly out and copy them into their own course. So I have to apologize. I cannot remember for the life of me exactly who it was that put this together, but I know that you're in attendance and I really appreciate you doing this. This is a huge help, and I know it will help all the instructors as well. So going in, what we need to do as instructors is you'll need to go in through the LAUSD High School Science Group, and then you're going to go to the Resources tab on the left side of the screen. Now within that tab on the Resources side, you're going to have a Labster folder. There's going to be a Physical Science subfolder and a Life Science subfolder. Now each of those different subfolders have different simulations in there for the instructors to choose based on the topics that are included within your semesters, excuse me, sorry. So basically, if you are part of the physical science department, then you'll want to go into this general section and be able to take the simulations that best fit your class. And to do that, you can copy the entire folder or just the subfolder. So you can take all of the Labster simulations with you if you'd like, or you can take just the subfolder that is direct to your class. And the way to do that is to basically go to the little settings cog on the side, and then you want to make sure you select Add to Course if you'd like to add the entire folder to the course. You can also click Copy To if you'd like to copy the folder into your own Resources tab. So then from there, if you just want to add a single lab and you don't want to add a whole folder full of simulations, you can pick and choose the specific simulations that you'd like to copy over to your folder. And all you have to do is within one of the subfolders, in this case, we'll just say physical science, or I guess in this example, it's life sciences. You'll click on the simulation that you'll want to get by going to the settings cogwheel, and then you'll copy that to the course, and that will move directly over to your course. Now, once you've copied that over to your course, you can open that and basically edit to enable the grading. So the reason that you'll do this is so that when students complete the simulations, the grades will automatically transport into your gradebook. So it should be an automatic transfer simply by enabling the grading within the settings. If you do have any issues with this, please let your direct point of contact know, and they can either reach out to me or our support manager to see exactly what the issue might be with that. So then from there, once you've clicked the enable grading, you have to add a couple other settings as well. And that would just be the points, a due date if there is any applicable due date, and then the category as well for how it's going to be graded and placed within the gradebook. So from there, we do have a quick video. So I can go ahead and play this real quick. I think it's about 1 minute and 15 seconds. There is somebody narrating that for you. So let's go ahead and watch it. And then from there, we can open up to questions and answers from there, and you know, anything else that we can do to try to make sure everybody gets off running and getting everything set up quickly. So let's go ahead with that. Well, let me exit out of here and I have it open.
How to add Labster to your courses. First, you need to be in the LAUSD High School Science group. Access the Resources tab on the side. Scroll down to the folder titled Labster Labs. You will find a physical science folder and a life science folder. You can choose to add the entire folder to your course, copy the entire folder to your resources, or if you click on the actual folder, you can access a specific lab and assign that to your course. Choose the course you would like to assign it to. Click Add. Once you are inside of your course, you will see it there. You can choose to edit the assignment, and right here, enable grading. That will create an alert for the students to do it, and you can grade it. If you choose to add it to your a course, let's say your sandbox, you can have access to the entire folder here and choose to assign it from that specific folder into another course within your courses.
Okay. So that was a very, very helpful video there. So what I'd like to do now is basically I would like to open this up to some questions and answers. So feel free to type your questions into the question box, and I will do my best to answer any and all that come through. And if we don't get any questions through the question box, if somebody raises their hand, I can unmute them to also answer the questions from there as well. Okay. Okay, so we have a couple of questions coming in. And the first question I see is, how do you notify students through edit again? I'm assuming that is through Schoology. I'm not exactly sure I understand the question. Let me see, Anthony. Give me 1 second. Anthony, I did just send an unmute request to you. If you didn't get that, feel free to let me know and I can send it through again. I'm not sure I completely understand your question. So I'll move on until I hear back. So then let's see. So for Ruth, you came in late, not a problem, no worries. There actually is no written portion of the labs. Generally, everything is going to be uh, generally it's going to be multiple choice, but there are a couple areas that ask for maybe like a formula or a certain element on the periodic table that they have to fill in on a chart or a table. But there's really no written portions of the lab that need to be done. Everything is basically going to just be accomplished through answering the questions that are basically just multiple choice, as I mentioned before. Excuse me. And then Wendy, thank you very much for your question. Can you please go over how to access the faculty resources? Will we need a special login? So Wendy, great question. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to send out the link to the faculty resources page right here to my main points of contact through LAUSD, and then I believe they have some sort of tree that's going to disperse all of the information that I provide out to all of the instructors. So if you don't get that information, please let your personal contact know, and then we can get that information out to you as soon as possible. And then we have IHOM. When we load the simulation through Schoology, I receive the audio, but the video is black. I'm using a Mac. Are there any specs that I may be missing? So one thing I'd recommend would be if you are able to check out our Labster support page. We actually do have articles that pertain to a black screen, and it's most likely due to some sort of loading issue or something like that. It also could be something within your browser settings, and then it could be a hardware acceleration problem. So usually that can be something that can be updated digitally. If not, then it may just be something that it may be that your minimum requirements don't meet the specs to run the simulations. But if there is an issue with that, IHOM, please let me know, and we can certainly go over that at another time. Okay. Thank you, Anthony. You referred back to your question about how to notify students through edit again, and that it was in the same window as enable grading. So let me see. Within the enable grading window, we have a few options. Let's see, right here. So there's not really anything that's going to happen to share any access for the students through here. All that you're going to have to do is once you copy the simulation over to your course, it's going to add the simulation into your course shell as an assignment. It's most likely going to look like a small green puzzle piece. And then you'll be able to make that active to give access to your students. So you don't really have to share any information directly with the student. It'll just be part of your class in your course shell. And then where they would normally come in to access assignments, that's where they would find the simulations as well. Yeah, David Green, yes, going through accessing the teacher resources. Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I will be sending out this link. I can also put this through into the chat right here on our call so that, anybody that wants to take the link, please feel free and copy that to use. We'll also be sending out an official version of this page as well with a little bit more information and instructions to go with it. IHOM, great question. Student work, is it graded by Schoology or do I need to go through each submission to grade? So everything that is done within the simulation will be graded automatically. So instructors don't need to do anything to go through and grade. So there's no, as I mentioned before, there's no like written portions that need to be graded. There's no lab reports that need to be graded. It's just the questions that are either incorrect or correct when they're answered. And then the student gets their point total based on how many incorrect attempts that they had throughout the course of the simulation. So when the grades come directly through into the grade book in Schoology, it will really depend on the point total that is put in on the enable grading portion. And the reason I say that is if you have simulations that are worth 10 points and a student gets an 85 on the Labster side, they'll get the 8.5 points out of 10 on the Schoology side. Ruth, glad to help out. Not a problem. Thank you very much for joining the webinar today. And David, I assume you're asking about the teacher resources getting to that same page? Yes, so this is the same page. There's going to be no special login or anything for the faculty resources page. There's really not going to be anything special that you need to do aside from just clicking the link to gain access. If you are prompted for a login, let me know or let the person know that provided the link directly to you, and we can certainly get to the bottom of that as it comes up. Okay, so we have a question from Carmelita. How do we know that students completed lab simulations? That's a great question as well. So within Schoology, you have the option to see your grade book not only on the Schoology side, but you also have the ability to go to what we call the Labster dashboard. So within the Labster dashboard, you have the option to set up a number of preferences to say, you know, students have to complete this amount of the simulation before they show up on the grade book. Students have to be above this grade to receive a passing grade. I want the first attempt that they have on the simulation to be graded or the best attempt to be graded. And that information will all be part of the instructions that you receive after downloading or after going through to the teacher resources. And if you're not exactly sure where that is, within the teacher resources, you can come through and check out exactly what needs to go into your specific LMS. So you can go right to Schoology, and then it will give you all the steps that we went through today, as well as everything to get the dashboard set up. And if you're not exactly sure where that is, you can go through this search page as well and type in dashboard, and then you'll want the very first result. And this will show you exactly what to do as far as setting up all your separate options to get the information to see that students not only completed it, but how long it took, how they answered the questions, and all of that. Okay. IHAM, let's see. So, okay, perfect. So IHAM, thank you very much for saying that. So any instructors that are looking for any information about gaining access to Labster, IHAM Dahi said that he can be the main point of contact for me. So if you guys are all able to communicate through him, then we would be able to, you know, have a nice smooth channel of communication to make sure all of the information gets to the right people. Anthony, great question about Chromebooks. How does Labster perform on Chromebooks? There is something, yep, so we have to check minimum specs for the Chromebooks as well. And that's something that you can find on our support page as well. It's one thing that we've been trying to document pretty well. And it really, really does, unfortunately, depend on the Chromebook, how old the Chromebook is, and it really depends on the minimum requirements. So, you know, we have this whole page specifically linked for like a certain type of Chromebook that we know operates best with Labster. That's not to say that other Chromebooks won't work entirely. But what we do is we have you just follow these steps to check the Chromebook specs to make sure they're up to date with our minimum processor speed and memory size. So as long as they have those, then you know you should be good to go with Chromebooks. But for any students that are having an issue with a Chromebook, I would definitely have them reach directly out to our support team right here at the chat bubble or directly through our support page as well. Okay, so Ruth, we have another question. Are students able to go back to the labs or do they have to do it in one sitting? Great question. So students have the ability to basically make it to a save point, and then they can close out of the lab and come back in, and they'll have the option to either resume or start from the beginning. So you know, there are places within the simulation where it may kick them back a little bit further. So I would just have the student watch out for that as well. And if you really would like to learn a bit more about you know, save points within the simulations, we do also have an article on that on our search page as well. And it just explains exactly what happens, and you'll get the prompt, you can continue from the save game, or you can restart from the beginning. Sometimes if there is an issue from coming back in and restarting, unfortunately, the best thing would be to clear cache and cookies and refresh the browser. It should still save the game, but if not, it will automatically restart to the beginning. So if that does happen, I would definitely reach out to the support team directly from there as well. Okay, so we have Pedro de Leon. The majority of our students use Chromebooks and or iPads. Are the simulation requirements possible for these systems? So as I just mentioned, Chromebooks, depending on like how new they are, as long as they have the 4 gigs of memory and the 2.5 gigahertz, or is it 2 gigahertz of speed, then I think you should be okay. But as far as iPads are concerned, we actually are not capable of running simulations correctly on iPads. The main issue is the calibration of touch points. It's completely different than point and click with a mouse. So I believe that is something on the roadmap for the future, but currently we are not able to run simulations correctly on iPads, tablets, or phones at the moment. Okay, so we have Lily, Lily Kazan. It was impossible to start the safety video. Oh, I apologize, Lily. If there is an issue with starting simulations, one thing I would highly recommend, I did mention it before, it's just a basic troubleshooting technique. I would definitely make sure, you clear your cache and cookies, refresh the browser, and then make sure the only thing that you have running is just the browser page for Labster, and that will give the simulation the best opportunity to run. If you do continue to have the same issues, I would definitely I would definitely reach out to our support team for a little bit more help, just to see if there's any technical issues that might be going on that we can't see up front. David, we see most of our students are using $80 Chromebooks. What are the chances they can run these? Well, I would highly recommend going to the Chromebook specs and comparing it against our minimum requirements just to make sure. If that's something that we are having an issue with, we'll have to talk to our tech team to see what we can figure out about making it a bit more accessible. So that one, I would definitely recommend going to this website to check out the specs of the computers if possible. So Chris, my colleague here at Labster, thanks for bringing that up. So again, I just want to remind everybody, the faculty resource page here where you can access all of our simulations. I just want to remind everyone, this is just for instructors only. Just for review, there's no need to, you don't need to download anything as everything is already set up within Schoology. And this should not be shared with students either. So if there are any questions or confusion surrounding that, please let us know, and we can certainly go over that with you. Okay, so we have Juliet. Can students unsubmit a Labster assignment if they get a low score, or are they allowed multiple attempts? Great question. So you have the option to choose between 2 different settings. You can have students be graded on their very first attempt. So if you're looking to use it as like a test grade or something of that like, or if you're just simply looking to have students do this as an assignment, you can select the best attempt. In both situations, students are going to be able to take the simulation multiple times, but the best attempt will allow students to take the simulation until they get the grade that they prefer, whereas the first attempt will just take the very first grade and allow the student to practice thereafter. So to answer the question, can a student unsubmit a Labster assignment? No. So depending on how you have the grading set up, they will be getting the grade that they earn by completing the simulation. And if it's only the first attempt that gets graded, then there's nothing that they can do to take away the low score that they earned or the high score that could happen as well, obviously. So yeah, so there's no getting rid of any low scores. So Pedro, great question. There's no need to, so the question is, do we need to download zip files to upload to the LMS tab directly within the faculty resource, or can we just access the files directly from Schoology? Definitely the latter. Everything has already been set up for you. Iham Dahi and Susan David from the team over there at LAUSD were a huge help in making sure that we had all of our simulations loaded and ready to go for all of you instructors, just to make sure that you have everything that you need and you can choose from the full library. So there's no need to go into this tab here to download any sort of zip file. Everything is already within Schoology, and if there are any questions and you need a little more direction, definitely let us know and we can walk you through the process. Yeah, so we have a request to see how the simulations operate. I can certainly do that. Let me see if we can get through a couple more questions, and then I'm happy to go through and demonstrate a simulation, of course. Let's see. Okay, so it looks like actually we answered that one already. So Lily, yes, if you'd like, what I can do now is I'll go into one of these simulations here, and I will actually, you know what, since you asked for it, we'll go through and do the lab safety real quick. And this is going to be a good opportunity to, you know, basically make sure that you all have an understanding of what the students are going to need to do. So if there is any question of like, I'm just stuck, I don't know where to go, you know, this might help you out a bit to be able to get through the first few steps. One thing I will say, I'm breaking all the rules that I made before. You should definitely have only the Labster window open that is running the simulation. And I'm also on a webinar, so it may take a minute to load the simulation and it may be a little slow when we get inside. So I just want to warn everybody before we get there. Let's do this. And for anybody else that does have questions, please feel free to continue asking. You know, I'm certainly able to multitask and make sure that we get all the questions answered that need to be answered. One thing while we're waiting for the lab safety simulation to finish loading, you may notice that we have a drop-down menu here. So we actually have the ability to go ahead and reach the Theory Center, the Help Center, and then check out the accessibility mode as well. Down in the bottom left corner, we have our minimum requirements, the specs for the computers to make sure everything is up to par, and then our supported browsers. I will recommend that we heavily suggest using Google Chrome and Mozilla Firefox. We have had some luck with Safari as well, but if Safari users are having issues loading simulations, I would definitely recommend the other two browsers. It will help in a lot of situations to make the simulation actually work a lot smoother. Okay, so we have started. So we're going to go into the simulation here.
Welcome to the lab safety.
This is Dr. One. So this is our AI, and they will help guide us through the virtual world. So I'm going to make sure that we have all of the sound off for the moment, just so that you can hear me and not getting confused. So this is the lab pad. So this is the student's lifeline while they're in the simulation. So all the information, all the questions, and all of the directions for everything that they're going to need to do within the simulation is going to appear here in some way, shape, or form. So you have access to the theory tab that I mentioned before that has all of the specific, you know, vocab words that may go into the simulation, any sorts of graphs and pictures that may help to answer questions. That can all be found here. We also have the media tab that as you go through and discover certain different areas of the lab or different parts of the simulation itself, you'll unlock different figures or drawings or graphs that may be helpful to answering questions down the road. The last thing on the lab pad is you also have a checklist for your mission. So this basically will go through and tell you what needs to be done just to be able to finish the simulation. So if a student's ever confused about what to do next, we always recommend that they read the theory tab and then check the mission list just to see exactly where they are in the simulation. Okay. All right, so I just wanted to look back. We have a couple other questions. I just want to touch base on those. So Lily's asking, how do we assign a lab? Do we share a code? So nope. So students, as long as they have access to your Schoology course, the simulations will all be based within Schoology, and there's no need to share a code. We've set this up as a universal license, so there's no need to apply a license code or a payment code or anything. So as long as students have access to your course, they have access directly to Labster. And for Miriam's question, where do we change the criteria to see how many times the student has attempted? So that again, Miriam, that would be within the dashboard. So when you're going through and setting up the filters for the results that come into your gradebook, you're going to want to select first or best attempts depending on the type of grading you're doing. As far as limiting the amount of attempts, we don't currently have the ability to limit student attempts for the simulations. But also within that dashboard, by clicking on a student's name, you'll be able to see the attempts that they have for any given lab. And then within that, you'll be able to see how the student answered the question. If we need more information on that, we can certainly go over that as well. So David, I see your comment and question. One thing that we can do is we can certainly work with our product team on the back end to see if there's any sort of contingency plan that we can come up with to help students that may not be able to run this because of using Chromebooks or iPads. I don't immediately have an answer, and I apologize for that, but we can certainly look into that to see what options we do have available. So Miriam, about the dashboard, so you can access that directly through the simulation, and it would be on that menu tab on the left-hand side of the screen that I had mentioned before going into the simulation. So if we come out of here, it would be under here. The only reason I don't have access to a dashboard now is because I'm accessing the simulation directly from the faculty resource page. So there's no dashboard for it to tie to. So when you're in your actual Schoology class, the very first option will be dashboard, and then you can get directly into your gradebook from there. So Dina, great question. Unfortunately, there are not separate modes like easy, moderate, or advanced. But what I would definitely recommend is if you are concerned about the difficulty of the labs, we have a bunch of simulations at the high school level that I would recommend using over some of the ones that are not at the high school level that are basically meant for college level students. And the way to tell the difference is you could either go in directly through the high school biology, chemistry, and physics sections, or look for anything that's labeled with the principles. So in this situation, cell division principles, that's basically something that we've kind of broken down to the principle level to make sure that students can get the basic understanding of that topic. Everything else is going to be a lot more conceptualized and based on a little bit more advanced topics within those simulations. So if you're worried about that, I would generally look at simulations that fall within these three areas here. All right. So just to go back briefly to the simulation, I just wanted to show exactly what you can expect. So if you're not exactly sure how to use the lab pad, you can hit yes here and it'll give you a brief walkthrough. Just for time's sake, I'm going to say no thanks. I already know how it works, just so I can show you a bit around the world that is the virtual lab. So we're going to click to open the door, if she'll let us. After we put our lab coat on, and now we have to get our safety goggles. As you can tell, I've not played the simulation in a little bit. So now once we have the goggles, we are able to enter the lab. So as you can see, this is all point and click adventure-based situations. Hi, Miriam. Yes, you can use it for AP chemistry as well. So those would be, if you're looking to give them a little bit more of a challenge for the university level, definitely go ahead and use any of the regular chemistry labs for that. And Natalie, you have the choice of choosing between the two specified folders, or you can grab all of the simulations as you would like. So you can download whatever simulations from either of those folders, whether physical science or life science, depending on how you need it for your class. You have full access to our entire library, so any simulation that you need access to, definitely let us know. Okay. So yeah, going back into the simulation again real quick, we definitely want to pay attention to what's going on the homepage because that gives us our directions. So this is basically letting you know within the lab here, there's a bunch of different things that were not completed, like washing all of our equipment, leaving chemicals out, leaving carts in the middle of doorways. So the entire purpose of this situation is basically to go around and make sure that, we're cleaning up the things to make sure we have a safe lab environment. So, it basically is going to point to exactly what you need to do. You click on it and then it puts it exactly where it needs to go. So that's basically everything that is going to be asked of you during the actual simulation as far as activities go. Those don't necessarily grade you for anything. The only thing that's really going to grade you is going to be questions. And once we get through basically answering all of the specific, like moving everything out of the way and cleaning everything up, that's when you're going to get the question, and it's going to basically ask you what needs to be done or what we just reviewed or anything like that. So are there any questions specifically about going through? Hi, Miriam. So we may be able to work on something separate for that. So under the two subgroups of physical and life science, it'd be nice to have them separated as high school chem or college chem and so what. So I would definitely recommend if you're unsure of what specifically to use, I would double check to make sure it's under one of these 3 pages on the faculty resource page, just in case. Lily, yes. So within the simulation, students should follow the written instruction on the lab pad. If there are any questions that it's just not clear about what to do, it will, it'll basically highlight what needs to happen next, essentially. Todd, do we have a spreadsheet with all of the labs sorted? Unfortunately, the only spreadsheet that I currently have access to has all of our labs in no particular order. And I've been begging our product team for something a little bit more sorted. But at the moment, the best tool that we have is the faculty resource page. Everything on here we've verified is 100% correct as far as what simulations are available for what sections. So if there is any question whether or not it's part of high school chem or a college chem class, the answer can be found here. That's a great question, Todd. How does the interface sort them? So I honestly don't know the answer to that or how they set up this page. I'm pretty sure that we've set up this page on a OneNote on the back end of a OneNote setup or something like that. And they've placed everything into the parameters that basically match high school biology, biotechnology, and intro biology and whatnot. So I'm not exactly sure how everything is sorted. And for the actual spreadsheet with the labs, the only good that that will do is if we're loading those simulation URLs directly into an LMS as an external tool. It doesn't really provide any information on descriptions or anything like that. So, that's the reason why we heavily rely on the faculty resource page, just because it does have everything organized and does give the descriptions of everything within that simulation. So Todd, you mentioned it'd be easier to export. I'm not exactly sure what you're looking to export. Everything is within Schoology. So if you go within, yeah, so Todd, if you'd like to unmute, please go ahead and ask your question, just so I can make sure that we have your correct question, I guess.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
So the thing was is that we were given a bunch of links and we were supposed to follow the links into these activities, but we weren't given access to this page. But this resource page is just an open page.
Yep. Yeah. So, you know, I pasted that link into the chat here. So if you go into the chat section of the webinar, you can click right on that link and it'll bring you to the same page that I'm on. So you don't actually have to go in and choose anything from this page to download. You just have to go in to Schoology and take it directly from the resource tab.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the way we viewed it in Schoology was it was two folders, and the two folders were separated into physical and life science.
Mhm.
We didn't have it separated the way it is on this resource. And I'm not seeing the chat either.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's see. Oh,
Do you
why is it not going
what
through?
are
So yeah, so I sent the chat through to the entire audience. So I'm not exactly sure why that did not come through. Let me see. So I'm going to send it through into the questions section as well.
all right, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So let's see. Perfect. So I apologize, Todd. Did I answer your question? I know it's not like
Yeah,
sorted exactly the same within those two
yeah.
sections.
Literally, we were just instead of being given these, we were just given two chunks. And so I was looking for a faster way to sort it, meaning that, you know, basically a list. So and however you guys have created these categories, they're probably done by meta tags, right? And so then the meta tag just sorts it as opposed to, and there's no way to export. So that we could just get a list of what's in there as opposed to click on it every time. So I could have a list and go through, I'm looking for this.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if it helps at all, like if you already have a list of exactly what you're looking to add, you can go through and do your own common cartridge and add it into Schoology. We just thought it would be easier to have all of the labs accessible directly through the resource tab. So, you know, like if it makes more sense for you, instead of going back and forth and trying to find the exact ones, you can just go directly in here and then just add the simulations directly into a cartridge to add to your own personal class. I mean, that
Okay,
might
and
be.
do we log into this or?
No, there's no login for this page. Nope.
Okay.
Yep.
But to create that cartridge, we just export them and then it'll, okay.
Yeah, and
All
then
right.
Iham Dahi also mentioned that they will sort them internally as well.
Okay. Thank you. I'm good.
Cool. Thanks, Todd. I appreciate you coming on and asking the question. Okay, so Ruth, to answer your question as well, to show how to set up labs to be able to take the simulations multiple times, they're automatically set up to be able to be taken multiple times. So if you're asking about how to set up, you know, the grading parameter to have it be the best attempt or the first attempt, that would be within the dashboard as well. So let's go ahead and go there, and I can show you that quick. So as I mentioned, if you go through the simulation, you can access the dashboard from the left-hand menu. And then once you go down through, you can view the student information as it appears in the gradebook. Now, when you first set up your dashboard, you're going to see a prompt to select some different settings to make sure you have the correct information porting into your gradebook. The first of which would be selecting the simulations that you only want to have visible. So that means all of the simulations we currently offer are going to be available on this page, but the ones that you want to see available within your course or your gradebook are going to be the ones that you want to select in green. Now from there, you'll go to the next setting, and that's the completion threshold. I always highly recommend using the bottom option, meaning that completion percentage does not affect the grading. It has nothing to do with the actual grade itself. It has everything to do with showing you the student's progress within the simulation. So that'll show you if a student has just started or if they've even finished the simulation. Next is the score threshold. Again, this is another filter that doesn't really do anything to the grade except turn it a different color. So if you do the standard pass-fail of 65, everything below 65 will appear red on the grade book for failing. Everything above will appear green for passing. So it kind of gives you a nice little window to see how the entire class is doing as a whole. And then from there, the play attempts. So Ruth, this is specifically to answer your question. So this is going to be what you're going to look at to make sure you have the correct grading parameter selected. So if you want the first attempt, it's just the very first time that the student plays the simulation. And that's going to make sure that as soon as that grade is completed, it's going to go directly into the grade book and the student can't alter it at all. They'll be able to play the simulation as many times as they'd like thereafter, but they'll never be able to replace that grade at all. It's just the first one. Best attempt is recommended as a learning tool. So students can go in and they can take the simulation as many times as they want. If it takes them 100 tries, but they get 100 on that last try, that 100 is going to be the one that goes into the grade book as long as it's within the due dates that are assigned by the professor. And then from there, you'll be able to save the settings, and it'll just let you know that you can always change the settings at any given point. It really is just about the information that you want to be able to have within the gradebook. And are you asking, do you only have to set up the gradebook once? It depends on how you'd like to grade. So if you'd like to just set it up once to have all of the simulations available that the students are going to do throughout the entire semester, that's the only time you're going to have to set up our gradebook. Cool. So one other cool thing that you can see on the dashboard, just as a little bonus information, I mentioned before that if you select an attempt from a student on a simulation, it will go through and it will show, you know, when they completed it, you know, how many points they got, you know, how far through the simulation they are. And it'll also show you how they answered the questions correctly or incorrectly. It'll show you how many times they tried to answer a question before it was correct, and it'll tell you how long it took to get through the simulation as well. You can export the information if you want to have it accessible via Excel, but as I mentioned, all the grades should automatically port through to the Schoology gradebook as well. Okay. So I will mention we are at 6:54, so we do have a few minutes left. So if there's any other last second questions, please feel free to let me know. If anybody would like, we're doing this again tomorrow. So feel free to join that as well at the very same time, 3 p.m. Pacific. Let's see. Okay, so Wendy has a question. I like the Labster grade view, but I got lost on how to access it. Is it through Schoology or Labster? Great question, Wendy. The easiest way that I'm going to recommend is if you open a simulation within your course, as soon as the simulation opens, you'll have the ability to click that menu on the left-hand side of the simulation tab, and it's just 3 lines in a blue box. You click on that, the very first option is the dashboard. I think that might be just the quickest, easiest way to get to the gradebook, but that's exactly where you'd want to go to gain access. Yes, the recording will be made available. It should be able to, it should be sending out directly to everybody that's registered. If you don't get access to it, I would let Iham Dahi know, and then we can make sure tomorrow, once we get everything for the webinar completely processed and loaded, we can send out a shareable link to the actual video. And again, if you did show up late and you have time to join us tomorrow, feel free to join that webinar as well. We'll be going through the same process as well. All right. So I think we may have just about wound down. I'm happy to stay on the line for another few minutes. But again, I'd like to thank my colleague Chris Connor Iham Dahi and Susan David for getting everything set up. I'm really happy that we're able to start working with the LA Unified School District. It's going to be very exciting. You know, if there's anything that we can do to help you be successful, please let us know. We're very excited to be working with you all, and we want nothing more than for you all to be successful. So again, thank you so much to everybody involved, and we're very much looking forward to working with you. Miriam, yes, let me see if I can unmute you quick. Go ahead, Miriam.
Oh, yeah, thank you. So I already started like using it and assigned it to my students. Some of them were able to do it, so I would go directly to Schoology and everything was working. But my only problem is with few students who can't open it. It won't load. It takes forever. So you think the problem is that their device is not meeting the requirement?
It's possible, Miriam. I think what I would do is I would definitely have them go check out to make sure that they meet the specifications. If they are having continued issues, definitely reach out to IHOM, and he can let me know exactly how many students it's affecting, you know, if it's in multiple classes, and then we can create a ticket with our support and product team to see what we can find out about solving the issue.
Because if it's with their device, like there's most of them are using like school Chromebooks, and well, like what would they do? So what would be the alternative if they cannot, if their device cannot support it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and that's something that when David asked earlier, David Green, I believe it was, I mentioned we may have to come up with some sort of contingency plan with our product team to, you know, see if there's anything that we can do to make this a bit more accessible for Chromebooks, because it is something that has come up in the past about Chromebooks, you know, having issues running our simulations, and we've actually had quite a bit more success over the past couple of years. So I'm hopeful that, you know, if students are able to follow like our basic troubleshooting techniques, again, it's just clearing cache and cookies and refreshing the browser and only making sure that Labster is the only thing running. Students should be able to run the simulations.
So I told them like they have to close everything and Labster should be the only browser open and all that. They have done that. So if it opens and it shows that it's loading, but it gets stuck at 16% or something, the cookies could be still a problem, or no? Once they get to that stage, that means everything is working except for the memory or speed is low.
Well, I mean, cookies and, you know, the cache and cookies can actually cause a lot more problems than just loading. It can actually cause problems within the simulation as well. So there are situations that we've come across if someone's memory during the middle of the simulation becomes completely full because of their cache and cookies, it might freeze the simulation, but as soon as they clear the cache and cookies and refresh the browser, they're able to join the simulation where they were and pick right back up in the simulation.
Okay, and also on the bottom of the simulation, there is like a little chat box. Can they contact them directly and like ask about like to try to figure out what's going on?
Yes, if students have any issues, that's exactly what I suggest. The chat box within the simulation is the exact same as the chat box on our support website. So all they have to do is just type in their issue. The bot will figure out exactly what the problem is and assign it to one of our agents. And the agent will already have all the details that the student provided. They'll know what the situation is, and then they should hopefully have some sort of resolution by the time that you contact them.
Thank you so much.
Very welcome, Marianne. Thank you very much for joining today. Okay, so I believe it is that time. You know, if there are any other questions, please feel free to forward them to the main point of contact that we mentioned before. And then, you know, we'll get all of those questions sorted out on my end, and, you know, we will do everything we can to make sure you're successful. So thank you all again for joining the webinar. I really appreciate it. Have a great night, and we'll be talking to you soon.